Yes, it's true. I did certainly challenge the teaching of the church from a very early age. In fact, almost since I can remember, I can remember asking questions and trying to work out what the people at Sunday school and church and whatever that I attended every week almost of my early life, what it meant, and asking questions about things that didn't seem quite right. And I think really it came down to using what you'd call logical thinking. And from an early age, I was clearly a bit of a logical thinker because I try and make sense of things that people said and put one alongside one and try and get two, and it wouldn't work. So, yeah, I suppose that was the problem, and right through with religion, up to probably early adolescence, and even now, a lot of my thinking around religion and why it doesn't work and what the issues are is based on what I call logical thinking. Really, that it's just not logical, doesn't make sense, couldn't really work. Yeah, I think that's often. I mean, for example, I would say that okay, there's a God there who created people, but who created God? That's a logical thought. You'd have to wonder where that came from, and the church would say, well, he's just always been there, like the universe. God exists, and we don't ask the question about why he's there, but he always has been and always will be. And so in my logical mind I say, well, actually that doesn't seem quite right. He must have come from somewhere originally. So I then think, well, maybe someone created God. And if that's the case, then that person that created God, who created them, and so on and so on, just keeps going back into an endless loop, which doesn't make sense. So that's the logic that I was applying back then, and still apply around quite a bit of the stuff when it comes to religion, because sometimes it's only straight logic you can use to try and make sense of it, or to say that it doesn't make sense, because there's no actual evidence or no scientific way that you could actually ever prove or disprove some of the questions. Which in her book Knocking on Heaven's Door, which I've been reading by Lisa Randall, that's a point that she raises, that often religion works on paradoxes, and the more paradoxical situation, the more people who are religious can actually dig in and just say, well, actually that's how it is and that's the end of it, and there's no way of proving it or disproving it. So logic is important. I suppose that as I went on through Bible class and I asked more questions and got into more trouble, I began to put science into the picture as well, and try and equate some of the things I knew around the scientific discoveries with religion, but also the questions were often based on logic, and I'd argue with my Bible class teacher on a straight logical point of, he would say, well, we need to have faith that there is actually a God, and I would say, why is that? What's the who says we should have faith in that? And he would say, well, we just have to have. And I would say, well, but why? What's the underlying reason for that? Where does it come from, and how do we know that that's what we should be doing? And he would get very irate. And I can remember my Bible class teacher once after church, we came out and I was walking down the street, and he was cruising down the road in his car, and he came out of the window and he yelled at me, well, I have faith that when I press the brakes on the car will stop. So I think he was trying to give me a bit of a message there. And I know that I just did have a bit of a chuckle to myself, because I knew that, in fact, I'd got to him, which wasn't deliberate, but I just knew that he actually wasn't able to answer my questions. And if he couldn't answer my questions, then why would I believe what he was saying? And besides, why would you always have faith that your brakes in your car are going to work? Because sometimes brakes in vehicles didn't work, and if you always had total faith that they would, and were never a little bit prepared for other eventualities, that was a bit silly as well. Yeah, so all those things I began to put together, But then finally, I began to twig, and this was, I guess, towards the end of my sort of church experience. I say to myself, why are these people so defensive? Why are they so determined to prove to me or to convince me that they are right and I am wrong? To me, it wasn't a big deal. I just didn't buy into religion. Well, that was fine. I was getting on with my life. It wasn't something that I actually dwelt on endlessly. And yet these people were determined to turn me around and change my mind. So I guess I thought, well, that's not right. There's something not quite right here. Why do they have to put so much effort into it? If they believe in things, well, that's fine for them. They can have their beliefs, and I'm not interfering with their beliefs. I'm not trying to convince them that they should have other thoughts. So it either means that they actually aren't entirely sure about what they're thinking, or there is something not right there, something's wrong. And so that ultimately really, I think, convinced me that this wasn't the right track to go down, and I just moved away from any importance of religion in my life as an active thing that I believed in or ruled my life. Yeah, so just reflecting on that, it was quite interesting that when I moved into special education, the same thing happened, and maybe it was partly a repercussion of having thought that way back. That when I had special class teachers and principals of special schools and schools that had units in them, and these principals and teachers were so determined to convince me that they were right and that special classes were actually really necessary for children, and that by not providing them we were actually doing a real it was an injustice to these kids. I realised that this was not right, that people don't have to put so much effort into actually convincing me about something if it's right. There's something wrong there, and so I just began to realise that there was there's something wrong about the special education thing in the same way that I realised there's something wrong about religion. So interesting. And then I guess once I started university, and or perhaps even before that when I was reading more widely, I began to see the science of the world and things that we actually did know, and realised that our scientific knowledge was actually really incompatible with religion. And interestingly, I probably haven't really come across anyone that's put that quite as clearly ever since I began to think that. And again, Lisa Randall in her book on Knocking on Heaven's Door, where she is saying quite clearly that science and religion are incompatible. End of story. Let's not try and make them compatible or try and merge them in any way. Let's just understand they are incompatible, and if you can't actually, in a sense, believe in both or have both as your guiding I guess, way of viewing life. And I think I realised that way back then, that if I was going to have science as my, I guess, way of informing myself about what the world is all about and how it works, and at least trying as much as I could out of that scientific approach, then you couldn't also have religion in there, and you couldn't somehow morph or make science fit religion any more than you can make religion fit science. They were incompatible. And I know a lot of people have actually tried to merge the two and to make the two actually work together, but it doesn't work. And I think that I realised that way back then. Obviously, Lisa Randall realises that, and I think that is the way that I sort of went. That once I had science in my framework and was going down that track, religion just couldn't be there. Absolutely. So that was the last, I guess, the last straw, if you like, for religion and me, and ever since then it's been gone. And interestingly, I was answering a question recently about does that make me an atheist, and my view is that no, I wouldn't see myself as an atheist, because I think, as I said in my answer to that question, if you say that you're an atheist, you actually almost implicitly indicating you believe there is something that you could believe in, but you don't, and that's even more than I think what religion deserves. So I'm just the person that I am, getting on with my life, and science is, in a sense, the framework that I actually try to understand the world in, and that I guess I put my yeah, put everything into in terms of my trying to understand what the world is and why we're here and all that sort of thing. And religion doesn't play a part. So yeah, I guess that's my history. That so right from my early Sunday school days, I've come down that track, and probably by, as I said, my early 20s anyway, that religion was totally gone. And just through my questioning, inquiring, and being someone with a bit of a query in mind, I've worked through to where I am now, and it's all fine. But an interesting path, and interesting that actually I tracked that, and I don't even know where that thinking came from in terms of how I actually went about doing that. But I guess somewhere in there is a logical brain, and it worked back then, and hopefully it's still working now. But I think it is.